For this lesson, Photoshop Classroom in a Book, Chapter 7, we're going to work on typographic design and creating a magazine cover. Once again, start at Canvas, go to your assignments, grab those Photoshop Classroom in a Book, Chapter 7, Lesson 7 zipped file, and download them to your desktop or to your flash drive. From there, go ahead, right-click, and make sure you do Extract All to open up those files. Let's take a peek at what's in those files today. Today you'll have the end, you'll have the start, you'll have match front, and the circuit board. Let's go ahead and hit the start file. So you'll see that we are building off of the image that we created in the last assignment. Let's start with File and Save As. And of course it's 07 underscore working .psd and save. So we're going to use quite a few different masks and things with type in order to create this cover. Instead of Advanced, Window Workspace Advanced, or Essentials, this time we're going to work with Graphic and Web, which is going to pop up a few different characters, character, paragraph, glyph panels that we didn't necessarily have when we were working in Essentials. Because we're going to be doing quite a bit with type, it makes it a lot easier not to have to go in and find those pretty frequently. So let's start with View, Fit on Screen, or Window. Try it again. View, Fit on Screen. There we go. So we can see the whole thing. We want to make sure you can see your rulers. So go to View, and if Rulers doesn't have a check mark, go ahead and add the check mark so we can see those rulers. We want to go ahead and drag a guide, a vertical guide, so we're going to click and hold and drag across all the way to 4.25, which is the middle of the page. And you'll notice you can kind of adjust it a little bit if you need to. Alright, so I'm Control minus. If you need to move it a little bit more, grab that Move tool, and you can always slide a little bit more, depending on where you need it. So it's 4.25. So the next thing we're going to do is we need to add our masthead to the top of here. The name of our magazine is going to be called Digital. So let's go ahead and make sure we are on the background layer because we want the text to appear above this layer. So it makes it a little bit easier. Let's go ahead, grab our horizontal type tool, and let's go over here to Character. For a character, let's go ahead and choose Minion Pro Regular. And here's Minion Pro, here's Regular right here. You see there's a lot of different types of fonts in that family. Our size is going to be 144. And we want to make sure that we are centering our text. Let's go here to the top row and do Center the Text. Let's go back to our character panel over here. And in the tracking, which is the one that says VA, which is how far apart our letters are, we want to do 100. And we want our color, so click our color, to be black. Black, you can either click in the corner or you can put in 3 zeros and you'll get black. Alright, now with our horizontal tool here, we're going to go on our insertion point, which is right here in the middle. We told it to be text, so it should type from the center out, and let's type the word digital. And you'll get, it's going to be a little bit too big, and that's okay. We're going to play with it just a little bit. Let's go ahead and double click digital, and it'll let us do a few things with the information. So we can see that this typeface is not working for us very well. Let's go ahead and choose a different one. Let's go ahead and grab a Myriad, which is a sans serif, no feet. And let's go, instead of regular, let's grab semi-bold. So it makes it a little bit bigger, a little bit nicer. And it's better, it fits on our page. Let's grab our Move tool, and we can use our arrows and nudge that down. Notice how you have those crosshairs in the middle of I. That helps you determine whether or not you're actually centered on that guide that we just created. Alright, so I'm going to click out on my pasteboard and do a Control S to save. So one of the next things we want to do is apply a shadow to our document. And a clipping mask. Because we want this digital not just to be letters, we want it to appear to be a circuit board underneath. So let's go Window and Open. And let's go ahead and grab that circuit board and say open. Now we need to be able to see these two items side by side. So let's go to Window, Arrange, and we want 2 up vertical, which means let me see 2 things side by side. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and click on the layer. This has background so we can see it's our circuit board. We're going to hit our Move tool, which is up here, and we're going to grab Shift at the same time. And that is automatically going to move that circuit board into the center of the document that we're moving on to. That's the benefit of hitting Shift. So that's pretty nice. We don't need circuit board anymore, so I went ahead and closed that. So let's go ahead. This is obviously going to be way too big. So let's go to Edit, Transform, and we want to go ahead and transform the scale. And we can go ahead and bring this down. You can see how it's changing the scale right here. Maybe you want to make it 50%, so you can go in width and height and do 50%, and height 50%. That's a little bit too small, so let's go ahead and make it 75 instead on both of those. So there's a number of different ways to transform that scale. And I want to go ahead and commit my changes with that check mark. You could also you can hit Alt and Shift and grab the corners, and it's another way to transform that scale a little bit easier. And move it, we're going to move it over top of the word digital. And we're doing that on purpose. We're actually going to create a clipping mask that has the image of the circuit board coming through those letters. So let's go ahead and commit our changes. And we want to double click this layer 1 and call it circuit board. And we'll hit return to confirm those changes. The next thing we're going to do is on the circuit board has got to be above the words digital, because we want to clip this circuit board to the words digital. So you might need to rearrange your layers if they're not in that order. On the circuit board layer, we're going to right click and we do Create Clipping Mask. And note how now anything that was black on that digital before now has the clipping mask. You can take that Move tool on your circuit board and decide what part do you want to have poke through as far as the image of the circuit board. So you've got kind of a lot of different options to play with when you create that clipping mask. Alright, so let's go ahead and add a few effects to our digital. It's a little bit blah right now. We can make it better. So let's go ahead and choose that digital layer. I'm going to go to the bottom of the layers panel and hit that FX, the layer styles. And we want to go ahead and add a inner shadow. So what do we want to do here? We want to go ahead and make the opacity 48. We want to make the distance 18. We want to change our choke to 0, our size to 16. So we get a nice kind of a contoured effect going on, which looks a lot better. So let's say OK. So now it kind of pops off the cover. I'm going to do a Control S and save what we've got so far. And one of the next things we're going to do is create some words that look like they're on her, coming out of her mouth on a path. So instead of a straight line, we're going to make it a little bit different. So let's go ahead, click on that model layer, and let's go to Window, and we want to choose Paths. And we want to click this one that says Speech Path. So they've already created this speech path for us, which is what the letters are going to sit on. We want to grab this horizontal type tool, and we want to make sure that Right Align is chosen here at the top. We're going to go ahead and make sure we make all these changes before we start actually typing. Our font family is going to be Myriad Pro. Let's make it regular instead of semi-bold. Our size is going to be 14. Our tracking, which is our space between the letters, we want it to bring it in a little bit, so it's -10. Let's go ahead and make our color white. If you want to, white is FFF, and OK. And we want it to be all caps, which is this third one in. So it doesn't matter if you type a caps lowercase, it will come out all caps. So now what we're going to do is go with our type tool. We're going to click close to our mouth and notice how the cursor changes kind of into a curved S. We're going to click there and type what's new. Yep, should have worked. Alright. Didn't work. Okay. Let's go back, try it one more time. These paths are kind of goofy. So I'm escape, speech path, type tool, click, there we go, W, what's new with games. And notice because we were right aligned, it automatically pushed that from the start over to the other end. So it's kind of like typing it backwards. Let's go ahead, grab that word games, and instead of having it be regular, let's go up to here and change it to bold. And now it doesn't fit. So what I need to do is grab my path tool, my speech path, and adjust this little guy right here. Or what I can do is go to my history and go back to my new type layer and just type it again. So I'm on my speech path. Go here, click, what's new with games. I'm going to double click my games. I'm going to go over here and make it bold. So now I've got my speech path, which makes it a little bit easier. Alright, so we need to go ahead and have two more things coming out of her mouth. So I'm going to hit my move tool and commit those changes. So I've got one that's here so far. So rather than have to play with that path again, I can do something else. Let's go to our layers panel over here, and where it says what's new with games, let's click that layer, do a right click, and do duplicate layer. And instead of what's new with games, it's going to be what's new with music. And say OK. But it looks the same. That's because it pastes that new duplicate layer exactly on top of the other one. So let's grab our type tool, highlight games, and instead write the word music. And now you can see that it is on top of the other, and you're getting kind of a weird 3D effect. Let's go to Edit. Let's go to Transform Path. We want to transform the rotate, and let's go ahead with our arrow keys and hit up a little bit, and let's change it to about 15 degrees up here. So you see this changing. Once that we're happy with it, we can hit commit and it'll move that up. And I can use my move tool, grab that path again, and let's squish it up so we don't have music on top of games. Alright, so we need to do what's new with phones next. So let's go back over to what's new with games again. Right click, duplicate the layer. Instead of games, it's going to be phones this time. And say OK. Grab our type tool. Instead of games, type the word phones. Grab my move tool. Go ahead and want to make sure we're grabbing phones. So I'm going to go to my layer file, grab that. And I can go and grab my rotate. Rotate it a little bit that way, play with it until you get it to the place where you want it to be. So it looks like the text now is coming out of her mouth, which is kind of cool. But we can play with it even more. We can actually warp the type, which makes it get kind of a different feeling and makes it feel like it's coming off instead of just being the wave. So let's go ahead and zoom in on these three. And we're going to right click on this what's new with games. And we want to go ahead and do warp text. It's going to say, what do you want to do with the warping text? We want to go ahead and change it to wave. And see, it already did something right there. From there, we want the bend to be 33, the distortion for the horizontal to be minus 23, and the vertical distortion to be 5, and then OK. So it kind of gives it a fun new look that is a little bit different than your standard text that's flat on the page. So let's go ahead and do the same with what's new with phones. Warp text, style. You can play with these. You can try something else. Maybe you like bulge. Maybe you want to try fish. Totally up to you. Play with those bends. Play with what you want it to look like. There's a lot of different options you have available. I'm going to go ahead and go back with my wave, and I'll make it the same as the others, which is a plus 33, minus 23, and a 5. But it's up to you as to how you're going to play with it. And I'm going to do the last one, what's new with music. Right click, warp text, style wave, plus 33, minus 23, and 5. So it's up to you as to what you're going to decide you think is a good way to create that. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and right click out on with my move tool, right click out on my pasteboard, control minus, so I can see what I've got so far. I don't need the paths anymore, so I can close that, and I can hide my history. So let's go ahead and use some guides to help you position text, because it's one thing to eyeball it, it's totally another to use the guides to help you line something up. So let's go ahead, right click on the ruler, drag a guide over to 8.275. It should be 8.25, but it's relatively close. So you're giving yourself about 1/4 of an inch. And let's click and hold from the top and drag a guide down to about 2 inches. Because we need to add some information here for our teasers. And our teasers, in this case, have already been created here on this sticky note for us. So that makes it a little bit easier. Let's go ahead, grab that move tool, and click on that sticky note. If we double click on it, we can see what's in that note. You might need to drag that down so you can see what's in there. We need to do a Control A in order to select all of it, so we can bring this in and place it here on our magazine cover. We're going to go ahead and grab our type tool. We're going to grab Shift and drag a box down within our guides till it's about as wide, and then I'm going to let go so it comes down a little bit. So I'm within those guides, and you can tell whether you're in the guides because it turns a different color. Alright, from there we need to go ahead and paste in what we copied. So we're going to do a Control V, undo. I clearly didn't copy this. Let's go back to our note, escape. Let's go back to our note, Control A, Control C to copy it. Let's go back and redraw that box, and a Control V to paste it in. So now we have the basic text that we need to style in order to create this magazine cover. And it came in as what we're using last. So that would be the bold, the myriad, the 14. We want to play with it just a little bit. So the first 3 lines, the trend issue. We can go ahead and close that note up. I'm going to Control plus so I can kind of see what I'm doing a little bit more. I'm going to go with my type tool and grab the words the trend issue. I'm going to go ahead and choose, I like the Myriad Pro, that's fine. I'm going to make it regular instead of bold. The font size is going to be 70. The leading, which is the space between the rows, see how it's got kind of a big space? I want to tighten that up. Let's bring it to 55. I'm going to go ahead and grab my tracking and see how it brought those much closer together. I'm going to bring my tracking to 50 and enter. And you see how it kind of spreads those letters apart for us a little bit. And I want my color to be white, which is all Fs, or you can go scroll down and find it that way. Alright, the next thing I want to do is, it's kind of interesting, but trend can be better. So let's grab that horizontal type tool and highlight the word trend and change it from regular style to bold. So now we've got kind of an interesting effect going on. Now let's format the rest of the text. So let's go ahead with our type tool, highlight what's hot down to the 3G. We want Myriad Pro. We want it to be regular. Font size is 22. The leading, remember there's a space between our rows, is 28. We want our tracking to be 0, so we want the letters to be standard. We want to make sure the drop caps is turned off, so it turns on the caps lowercase. And that's not too bad. So let's click out and see what we've got so far. Alright, so let's go ahead and make what's hot and what's not stick out a little bit more. Let's grab our horizontal type tool, highlight what's hot, and go ahead and make that bold. And let's make it a little bit bigger. Let's bump it up to a 28 point. And we'll do the same thing with what's not. Want to grab it to bold and 28 points and enter. So not too bad. So the last thing we can do is change this trend. Let's make it the same color as the word digital. So highlight the word trend. In the color section in your character panel, go ahead, click the white, and take your dropper, drop over the word digital, and find one of those colors of green in that title that you like and say OK. We're getting close. We're almost done. Let's go ahead and do a Control S to save what we've got so far. The last thing we need to do is add a volume number right in here. So we're going to do that with a rectangle. Let's go here to our rounded rectangle. It's about the second shape down, about third way down. And we're going to do a Control plus so I can kind of see. Grab my hand, my space bar, make it a little easier. And I'm going to draw a rounded rectangle right over here by my L. And it's filling with white because that's the color that we were using last. And what's color is in here in our foreground. We're going to play with that a little bit. So for our properties panel, we want, which is right here, we want the width to be 67. So if you didn't get it quite perfect, you can always adjust it. Let's go down here to our fill color, and our third row down, choose one of these light oranges, kind of the peachy colors. And we can change the way the corners are linking together. So let's go ahead and switch out of our panel. And right now, all the corners are perfectly round. We might not want them all to be round. So let's go ahead, if they're clicked together, any change I make will make a change to all of them. I want none of them to change. So I want the lower left to be 16. And I want everything else to be 0. So only one of my corners will be round. And I can use my arrow, grab my move tool, grab my arrow keys, and kind of squish that over next to that guide that we made earlier. And click out, and I can see that now I have this arrow, or this rounded rectangle, sorry. So the last thing we need to do is add some text in here. Let's go ahead, and under our horizontal type tool we have a vertical type tool. And we're going to add some vertical type. We're going to hit Shift and click at the bottom so it creates a new text box and doesn't grab the other frame. And we want to write volume 9. And yes, it's huge because that's the size that we were using most recently. So let's do a double click, should select all of it. Let's go ahead, choose a Myriad Pro. Let's make it skinny, so let's make it condensed. Our font size is going to be 15. And clearly it didn't select all when we did it all. So let's go back in with our Control A, select it all, make it 15. Undo. Type size is 15. It was Myriad Pro. And we had it as condensed. Alright, and our color, let's go ahead and make it black, which is 000, and say OK. So now we have volume 19. Commit any changes, say yes. And we can grab our move tool and kind of adjust that so it's more centered in the page. Alright, so now what we can do is take a look, see what we've got. We want to go ahead and make sure we get rid of this note here at the bottom. So we're going to do a right click and a delete note. Say yes, we want to go ahead and delete the note. We want to go ahead and hide the guides, which is Control plus and semicolon. And it will take those guides off. So I can do Control minus and hide all those guides for me. Last thing we're going to do is we're going to flatten it. Remember, we looked at our size compared to flat versus not flat. Let's do File, Save As. Instead of 07 working, we're going to do 07 flat or flattened, either one. And save. Of course, now we have to actually go into this flattened, right click on our layers panel and do a flattened image, and it brings us down to a much smaller file size. So now you've used a lot of different typography tricks in order to create a magazine cover, which you will be creating a cover for your publication later this semester. Make sure you turned in the flattened and the regular PSDs for this assignment, and that's all for this one.